Well, opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu also said he would be ready for a runoff. As mentioned earlier, polls on the eve of the election had suggested Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu was on course to unseat Mr. Erdogan, who's been in power for 20 years.
Erdogan,
despite all his smear campaigns and insults, Erdogan did not get the result he expected. Nobody should get excited about a fait accompli. Elections are not won on the balcony. Election data still continues to come in. If our nation decides on a runoff, with our pleasure, we will definitely win this election in the second round. Everyone will see it.
Well, a third presidential candidate, Sinan Ogan, has secured 5% of the vote. So far, his endorsement could be crucial in a runoff. So far, he's refusing to back Mr. Erdogan or Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu.
It seems that the elections will go to the second round and Turkish nationalists and Kemalists will be the determinants of the runoff. Dear friends, there will be another difficult 15 days ahead of us, and during this time, if the elections are completed with the current results and go to the second round, we will do our best to make this process a good one for our nation and our country. At this time, we are not saying that we will support one party or the other.
Well, for the very latest on that knife-edge Turkish election, let's cross live to Istanbul and speak with AP correspondent Shamim Chowdhury. Good to see you, Shamim. So a second round runoff vote in Turkey in 2 weeks' time after neither front-runner reached 50% of the vote. But it does seem, does it, as if the strongman President Recep Tayyip Erdogan secured a better than expected result?
That very much depends, Charles, on what polls you look at. Now, this had been dubbed as the biggest challenge in Recep Tayyip Erdogan's 20-year career as leader of Turkey. He was Prime Minister from 2002 until 2014, and he was then President from there on. Now, it was indeed a very tight race. The polls had been showing, although there is a general feeling that they can't be taken at face value here in Turkey, but they had been showing that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu had been in the lead just by a very slim margin. Now, Erdogan's winning percentage was 49.4%. It was a far tighter race than has been in previous years, and there are a number of reasons for this. The country is going through an economic turmoil, cost of living. There is a cost of living crisis here, as there is in many other parts of the world. Food prices have doubled in some places. The lira has tanked. So all of these, and of course the devastating earthquake in February, where more than 50,000 Turks lost their lives. So Recep Tayyip Erdogan really had to step up in view of all these issues that he has been facing in recent times, and that would in some way account for a narrower margin of win than he has had in the past. But what this goes to show, really, Charles, is that despite these challenges that Turkey is facing, it is still very much behind its president, one who he knows. Many of the areas where the earthquake happened are AKP party, which is Erdogan's party, very, very loyal, staunchest supporters, and they came out in droves to vote. In areas such as Marash and Hatay, the percentage of people voting for Recep Tayyip Erdogan was as high as 70%. This tells us that this is indeed a very divided country, but it is also a country that is facing a cultural war. These divisions are cultural and ideological, and perhaps less so about the current economic situation in the country. It has survived. It is going through to a second round. The question is, will he survive the second round?
Indeed, that is the big question, isn't it? I just need to point out, Shamim, that your sound appears to be quite low, and we seem to be picking up more of the ambient noises. I mean, we can hear you, but it does appear to be a bit low. Nevertheless, these 2 weeks before the runoff will be a very tense time in Turkey, won't it? Because we're talking about a very polarized society with two very different candidates representing two very different visions for Turkey. So a pretty intense 2 weeks ahead.
Very intense, Charles, and you're absolutely right. It is polarized, but I think what we need to make a point of in these elections is that the Nation Alliance, which is the opposition alliance, which consists of the CHP, the main opposition party, plus some other smaller groups as well, is very, very diverse. Now, it includes a party called the Future Party, which is led by Ahmet Davutoglu, a former prime minister of Turkey under Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He is a conservative. Now, the main Kurdish party is also aligned with the CHP and some other parties as well. They are very, very diverse. They have very little in common, certainly very little in terms of ideology. There's been a lot of infighting among them, in particular when it comes to picking who their leader should be. Now, Kılıçdaroğlu he's lost 4 times as leader of the CHP. He has a track record of losing elections. It does beg the question why those who are so keen to remove Recep Tayyip Erdogan would put someone like him up. He doesn't have the charisma of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He's bespectacled, softly spoken. He is a former accountant. There had been a lot of infighting between these parties about who should be leader. You would think that for, let's say for the sake of argument, 50% of the population wanting to get rid of Erdogan, that they've had all this time to come up with someone who would perhaps be able to stand up to him on his own level. It doesn't seem as though that is what's happened, and that may account for why the polls have ended up being incorrect. Now, in terms of what we can expect over the next few weeks, you mentioned that the third candidate, Sinan Oğan, got 5% of the votes. It could all be down to him now. He's obviously not going to be running on the 28th of May, but he is formally a member of a reasonably large political party here in Turkey called the MHP. Now, the MHP is aligned with Recep Tayyip Erdogan's AK party. By that logic, it would seem reasonable to assume that those 5% of votes will now turn to Recep Erdogan for president. If that is the case, then it would make him a clear winner. But at this moment in time, anything can happen.
Well, it was important for us to know about that third candidate who, as you said, could become the kingmaker. But there have been allegations, Shamim, suggesting that President Erdogan's AK party has been interfering with the counting and reporting of results. I mean, is that likely to be independently investigated?
Well, the Supreme Electoral Committee here, the Electoral Commission here, has issued a statement that it does not believe that there has been any misconduct on the day of on polling day, or indeed any of the counting. And it is kind of the legal body here. It is accepted by all across the board, all parties to be, and in fact the population to be fair and transparent. That is its job. Now, in addition to that, there have been 14 independent election observers at these elections from the OSCE, the International Election Observation Committee, and so far they haven't reported back that there's been any irregularities. In terms of the counting, before the Election Commission issued its results, which were this morning around 9:30 local time, the results, the unofficial results, if you like, were being reported by 2 agencies. One is a pro-government one is an opposition one. Now, it is generally understood that there is not a margin of error in terms of the counting for both those agencies. The election committee here gave them until 5 o'clock this afternoon for any party to lodge any kind of complaint. So there is a process that is in place where within the system where any kind of accusations, any allegations, or any kind of complaints can be addressed, and certainly they will be looking at those now. But just to say, the turnout has been very, very high, more than 90%.
Shamim, thank you very much indeed. We've got much greater clarity now. Shamim Chowdhury is talking to us there from Istanbul, and she is, of course, a RISE correspondent.